Hey, what's going on, family? This is Ty.
And this is Joe. Welcome back to the 2B podcast. And thank you for your patience while we had technical difficulties, right? It wouldn't be a season if there wasn't one.
We had to work a few kinks out, but we're here. We're back. We're here. And of course, we are highlighting Black excellence. We always talk about that as being one of our missions. I mean, we do it in so many ways, through business, through education, through uplifting, through just pushing and passing out information that's necessary for all of us to rise up, to us to resist, joyful resistance.
Yes, joyful resistance. And the more that we resist with joy and love and education, the further we will progress. So that is basically what we are trying to do, and do it to the best of our ability.
That's right. Before we go any further, make sure you are following us on all of our social media handles at 2BE Podcast. And I want to shout out, a lot of folks have been hitting us up on Facebook lately. So thank you for all of those likes and for commenting on all of our posts. We see you.
And appreciate you. Thank you. It actually was crazy, Ty. I was looking at our Instagram the other day and I was like, oh, snaps. When did we get 300 followers? A little over 300, actually. Shoot. I was like, okay. Y'all out there. Thank you for the love. Thank you so much for the love. That's amazing. That is amazing. And hi, Judens. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon. Good evening. We are thankful that you are here. So, Ty, quick question. Okay. We're in Boston.
That's right.
We're doing pretty well, in comparison to other states. But is there any part of you that feels like phase 4 is just like a time to forget COVID exists?
I don't feel that way. I feel like as I've ventured out into the world, I still see everyone's wearing their mask. Even outdoors when you're in a group, in a collection of people, excuse me. And I also see that some people are still wearing gloves, even though the melanin nurses told us a couple episodes ago not to wear gloves. But at least it shows that they're thinking about taking precautions. And then also, I really have seen quite a bit of people trying to do their best to stay socially distanced when you're in a store. And people just sort of looking down at those markers that are in most stores now to keep their 6 feet when you're in line in the grocery store, at Costco, or wherever. So I don't feel like people have thrown caution to the wind, at least not here.
Not quite, although there are some places I'm like, wait, what do you mean you went to the gym? What do you mean the Arboretum is packed? Did you see Southie a couple weekends ago with the beach? Oh my goodness.
I'm not mad at it.
Out here.
I'm not mad at it.
They took full advantage of this heat wave that was this weekend.
No, Florida was on a whole nother level. I don't think we're that bad. I appreciate that folks are going out and about, because at the end of the day, it's something that we've talked about off air, and I've talked about it with my friends, that when you're in the Northeast, your summer days are precious. They're measured, they're counted. And so as you look at the calendar, you see July coming to an end, you think about August, and then the fall is going to it's going to roll in before you know it. You have to take advantage of those days. So I don't begrudge anybody for going to the beach, for going out and just being out in the air. I wouldn't be playing basketball. I did see that. That's a stretch, because now you're sharing one object, that basketball, and your sweat and your perspiration, and obviously
gotta play defense.
Obviously the molecules, or what do they call it there? The moisture from your mouth, the particles, thank you, from your mouth and your nose are going to be on the ball and on each other. So I wouldn't do that per se, but I'm not mad at anybody that's out and about living their best life.
Living their best life. You know what? And I don't, in part of me doesn't blame them either. And part of me is just like, we're all trying to find some semblance of enjoyment during this time and feeling like we have summer,
Sure.
Before we go back to school.
So. Right. And before we go any further, I wanted to shout out, because I'm always wearing shirts. I always got to have my shirt game right. And this one says, as you can see, Black Lives Matter. And more than likely, you can't tell, but inside of the letters is written some of the name or many names of Black women and men that died at the hands of the police due to police brutality, due to racism. And I got this shirt from the Right Stuff Chicks, which is a Black-owned t-shirt company. They're also educators, of course. So that's really cool. I'll put that tag right here in the comments. So the Right Stuff Chicks, Black Lives Matter shirt. I love it. It feels good on the skin too, and I look good.
Ooh,
so shout out to them.
Snazzy. Yes. Yes, we are here for it. We are here for it. And normally I wouldn't make a comment about my shirt, but y'all are my listeners, and I haven't said anything. But Ty is going to Harvard, and I am too. 2B
Yes,
is
you
going
are.
to Harvard. Hey.
The cat is out the bag. Finally, I was wondering if you were ever gonna just like tell people you're just gonna show up at graduation, like, hey, by the way, I was at Harvard. Like,
I'm not gonna lie, I thought about it. I thought about it. I was like, I was gonna wait till my birthday, but I thought our listeners could get like a little inside scoop. A little inside scoop for them. So it's happening. It's official. That was my announcement. You heard it first right here on 2B Podcast.
That's cool.
So we're going back to school.
Indeed.
And the question is, are our students as well?
You know, to be honest, I have flip-flopped. My mindset has been in different places as the weeks have rolled upon us. A few weeks ago, I just knew we were going back to school because it felt like that's the way the ball was rolling downhill. Then, after all of those outbreaks in Florida and Georgia and Texas, even 45 has told people to wear masks. So we're going backwards. Because a few months ago, he was saying, mask. You know.
Mask. He was showing up to events not even wearing a mask.
Somehow now wearing a mask is patriotic. Funny stuff. But nevertheless, excuse me, I can tell now that I think more folks across the country are saying to themselves, sending kids back to school may not be the right thing to do. And we know why, right? We know why we want students to go back to school. It's because school relates to daycare, number one, and because parents need to go to work so that our economy can be restarted. That's why we want young people to go back to school. That's really what it comes down to. It all comes down to money. We don't really care about the safety of each other, especially the staff, because I've heard so much about what about the kids being sick? What if the kids spread the germs? What if they bring COVID-19 home? I haven't heard enough about what about the educators? What about the staff that works with them? Because our lives are truly in danger. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
100%. You know what? And you are right. And at some point, I'm wondering, when does the economy come second to our safety? Even the governor of Florida, who said, there are more important things than living, is currently backpedaling on that. And I'm wondering, when are we going to start doing the same thing with our students, with our safety? Because honestly, yes, we understand that our kids are not in the high risk group, which is great, which is awesome. But
some of them are.
Thank you for that. Some of them are, because some of them also are in the at-risk category because they have pre-existing health conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we also think about the people in front of them, their teachers, we need to think about the fact that 18% of teachers are 55 and above. And these teachers, this age group accounts for 92% of the deaths in the United States due to COVID. So yes, I understand that the highest risk is 65 and above, but we can't ignore that fact, or teachers with underlying conditions. What about them? What is going to happen? What precautions are we taking to protect our educators who are at risk?
It's not about us. That's the message that's been sent. I mean, if we're being honest, it's not about us, right? Now, I wanted to make sure that I put that up here because what happened there? Something happened to the screen. I don't know. But I was going to put up there that, yes, we have an issue because it seems like the educators' lives don't matter nearly as much, right? So you just talked about it, that 18% of all teachers are over 55 or 55 or older. And those are the folks that are really and truly at a disadvantage. Thinking about social distancing in the classroom, how do you social distance when the classroom walls are not going to grow? Right? Over the next few weeks, the classroom walls are not going to grow. So if you have 30 kids, 25 kids, 20 kids in a classroom, which most public school teachers do across the country, where do you spread them out at? And then also, how do you keep them separated? Right? Because especially depending on the grade level that you're at, even in high school, students want to get up and move. They want to get out of their seats. They don't want to be sedentary all day long. And the CDC had the nerve to come out a couple weeks ago and say, kids should spend the entire day in one classroom. Talk about
Which
guidelines.
kids? Which
Talk
kids? Can
about
we talk about
guidelines
which
written
kids?
by someone who clearly does not spend their day in a classroom, because that sounds like absolute chaos.
Garbage.
That is drama and issues waiting to happen. That is all that is,
But
for
I
you to
mean,
sit
what?
students in the same classroom for 7.5, 8 hours a day. Never.
They haven't included us in the conversations. They had like, what else do we expect? Like, it's like, okay, administration is not in the classroom. These higher ups who are making these protocols are not in the classroom. The least you think they could do was say, hey, teachers, hey, unions who represent the teachers, why don't you come and have a seat with us at the table while we come up with the plan moving forwards? Why don't you tell us what you think is best and what is needed, since you are on the front lines? That's honestly been the most disappointing part of this whole thing. We're the ones who are going to be there, yet we are the ones who are left out of the conversation.
In some places, teachers are being included, and I think that, I commend those districts, those schools, for reaching out to their staff, their teachers especially, to get their input, see how they feel about reopening and what they feel like needs to be done. Because each and every teacher doesn't have a podcast like we have to share our opinions, have our voice be heard. But it's disappointing because it just seems as if there's something happens. There's something that happens when you get to a certain level, when you elevate, maybe it's to an administration level or to a district level, there's a separation. You forget what it's like to be in the classroom, to be on the front lines. And that happens in a lot of fields. But the part that really is disturbing to me is we've just gone through what? March, April, May, now June, July of virtual meetings. So it's not as if the excuse could be we couldn't come together. You could have sent out a Zoom link. You could have sent out a survey, a Google form, and gathered information, gather the ideas that teachers had about what needs to happen to reopen schools in a safe manner. But as Tanika, our listener, has said, they don't really care about us.
All I'm trying to say is that they don't really care about us.
That's it. They don't really care about us. And you're spot on, Tanika, they don't. Right? Because if they did, they would have asked us first, like, hey, what do you think?
100%. 100%. And my thing is, we need to think about the fact that there are students who will be in these classrooms and will be going back home. And even before that, I love what Brenda said about the fact that her kids are not going back to school, because what happens when the teachers get sick? Who's going to teach the students when the teachers get sick? And that is a great question. And are we going to make any concessions for those teachers with underlying health issues? And what if your partner has a health issue? So it's like, okay, I go to work, but then I come back and you have a health issue? Like, how does that work?
Questions that need to be answered, just like the title of our show. I will say that to that point, there was a comment on our Instagram from one of our former guests, Christian Lopez, who teaches outside of Atlanta. And he said, if a teacher is infected with the virus, will sick time be used for their quarantine time, right? Because once you're infected, you're supposed to quarantine for 14 days. Will teachers have to use their sick time to quarantine because of a disease that they contracted performing their job? I say hell no.
You told me to come?
Right, I say hell no. But at the same time, do you then risk losing your job? Because not everyone has that opportunity, is not in a position to be able to say, you know what, forget this job, I'm leaving, I'm out. I don't need this. So to me, there needs to be some setup of how is sick time going to be allocated? Is there some fund that's going to come from? Is the district just going to allow teachers, if they present a positive test, to then say, all right, here's 14 days for you to take off? But then that also brings another issue. We still have to talk about HIPAA, right? Because HIPAA does not allow for your information, your medical information, to be released without your consent. Now, as a teacher, I may say, I don't want everyone to know that I have coronavirus for whatever reason. I may not want that information out. But if I have to show it to prove that I need the time off, now I have a conundrum. I have a predicament.
a serious predicament, not only a violation of your privacy. I'm thinking about, okay, in the inevitability that somebody tests positive, what happens if we went back to school? Matter of fact, are they going to be providing testing? Because, and if so, how much? Because when you think about it, the last time I was looking, Massachusetts was testing about 60,000 people a week. That's awesome, right? But we have about 60,000 people just within our school district alone. So if we wanted to test every single student within our school district, that's an additional 60,000, give or take. I know some of the circles will overlap, but like, what are we going to do? And that's just our school district. What about the many other school districts within Massachusetts? What's the plan?
Let me ask you a question. Can you dribble a basketball?
Yes.
Can you shoot?
Sometimes.
And you can pass?
I can pass. Oh, pass. Pass game on.
All right. Well, then you're set. Then if you join the NBA, you can get tested every day. That's really what it comes down to. Just like we posted on our Instagram page, NBA players, sports players, somehow miraculously, they can put them in a bubble and test them on a daily basis. Every day. So if you can dribble a basketball, pass, shoot, dribble, and pass, you're set. Don't worry about a thing. Otherwise, you don't really care about us.
Oh, man.
And I think that it's important that we're having this discussion right now because I got a notification to my phone from CNN earlier today, and I said, I had to pull over. And it said that the U.S. has surpassed 4 million COVID-19 cases. That's 1 million new cases in just 15 days, right? 1 million new cases in just 15 days. And again, we've been dealing with this since the end of February. So at this point, we should have not only flattened the curve, we should have smashed it. But because, as we talked about, across the country, not just those states that we continue to mention, but across the country, there has been a lax in terms of wearing masks, using hand sanitizer, washing your hands, social distancing in general. The curve has continued to widen, not flatten. And, you think about it.
You're absolutely right. Actually, there was a time where we were dipping, but unfortunately our R value, which is basically like how many people, if one person's infected, how many secondary infections will there be, has risen. So we were below 1, which is the safe levels. But now we have increased to above 1 to about 106, which is still better than other states. But that means that we are literally on the up and up, but that's not a positive thing. So it's like, what is happening? We are not even moving in the direction needed to even have these conversations about going back to school. Needless to say, these questions that still remain unanswered with our sick days, with the amount of testing that they're going to have, how they are going to protect us. And matter of fact, what is the day even going to look like?
Well, one thing I wanted to just bring up real quick, because I saw that Tanika made another great comment here. And she said that she just saw that Tufts University is testing students and staff every 4 days. So if Tufts can do it, I think that for our employer, Boston Public Schools, they could do that, and other districts across the country could. And in Boston specifically, Boston Public Schools is the largest employer in the city of Boston, right? So that means we are the majority in terms of the workforce. Then we need to be taken care of in that way, where there's consistent testing so that we can then quarantine those folks who have been infected and prevent the spread. I mean, I think that that's just the right thing to do in a human sense.
Agreed. Agreed. And I just don't understand how you're even convening and having discussions and not talking about the rate of testing that is going to happen, and what supplies and monies need to be allocated in order to make sure that is happening within schools. I mean, I guess the theme is going to be like unanswered questions, and they don't really care about us because everything is kind of coming back to those two things. But okay. So we still have to think about the fact that maybe we're going to go back to school. Maybe even if it's just hybrid, right? There may be days, although there are many states who have said absolutely not, no one's going back. We have not. So we have to think, our district specifically has not. We have to think, what do you think that this day is going to look like? Are we going to have shortened days? Are we going to have staggered entry and exit? Are we going to have, what is the plan? I know BPS has certain things that they themselves have put out, but what is the plan? This is what they said: 6 feet of social distancing, mask on every student, in transportation, 1 student per row per bus, and students will sit at alternate desks, and there will be a hybrid model. So basically, 2 days in, 3 days remote learning. But is that enough?
At this point, I think that's the best that you can do, that you can expect, quite frankly, because there's still so much more information to be unearthed. We still need to see where the numbers look. We're supposed to go back to school, I believe, September 6th, yes. Right? I think that's the date. So that's after Labor Day. I'm also curious to know, what does the spike, what do the numbers look like after Labor Day weekend? Because I expect a spike. Because again, when you think about it, especially being in the Northeast, Labor Day sort of is that symbol of the end of summer. Yes, so people tend to go all out. Exactly. It's time to go all out. I'm going balls to the wall from July 4th to September 1st, right? I'm going all out because I know when the winter comes, I'll be quarantined without COVID, hopefully, in the house in the cold. So, I really want to know, what do the numbers look like at that point? Because at that point, the decision may have been taken out of all the districts across Massachusetts and across the country's hands, depending on what the spike is. Because people will be out at the beach, they will be at barbecues and at cookouts.
and that is going to be a problem. And I wonder, are they going to make it so, like, if there is a spike, they will be able to say, okay, maybe we're not going to come back, okay. And my thing is, okay, we come back. What about the sanitation standards? Like, and who's expected to do that? Like, am I expected to clean, like, after my class? Are we rotating classes? Like, are teachers just rotating? Like, Ty, we were talking about, like, how we used to love in high school the fact that we rotated, because God forbid you were stuck in a classroom with one of your teachers all day. Like, that was a surefire way to make it so I wasn't even going to school. Like, it wasn't even a question. No, thank you. I'm not going.
Without a doubt, one of the byproducts of whatever the rollout becomes will be attendance. There are going to be some attendance issues. Some parents are going to choose to homeschool their students. So that's going to cause them to, and by homeschool, I don't necessarily mean homeschool throughout the year. I mean, from time to time, maybe a week at a time, they want to keep their child at home. That's going to cause attendance issues. The contraction of COVID-19 is going to cause attendance issues. The rumors of contraction of COVID-19 is going to cause attendance issues. And just like you brought up, if I'm a student that is assigned to a classroom with a teacher that I don't particularly have a great relationship with, which is a whole nother conversation for another day, then that's not going to encourage me to want to come to school, right? Or maybe I want to come late. So maybe if I'm a half day in one class, half day in another class, I'll skip that teacher's half, because I can only imagine some of my high school teachers. I had some phenomenal high school teachers, but then I had 1 or 2, 3 or 4 that truly I did not get along with, because I didn't feel as if, number one, that they cared about me as a human being, and two, right, that they were interested in what I was interested in beyond just them discussing the curriculum. And I think we've talked about many times about building relationships. Building relationships is going to be crucial and critical whenever we go back to school, because of all the traumas that students have experienced during this time away, still experiencing when they come back. We're in the midst of a dual pandemic of a fight against racism and the coronavirus pandemic. So there's
shout out to Boston for acknowledging that.
Yes, there's quite a bit of work to be done, and it really has to start with the relationships that students are having with their staff and vice versa.
Yeah, 100%. And then I guess the question there is, like, okay, so we know that, like, actually, this is great. Brenda says, come on, we basically can't even get them to wash their hands. We can't keep the bathroom stocked with toilet paper and soap. How do they expect us to make sure that kids and staff can appropriately and effectively wash their hands to stop the spread of the virus? And even just thinking about kids' hygiene as is, I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I have 2 solutions or 2 ideas that I want to offer up. One, and this one I won't take credit for. I got it from an administrator that I've been speaking to, and I won't mention his name in case he doesn't want his name attached to this. But I believe all the doors have to come off. All the doors,
Ooh.
minus the bathroom doors, because that's a privacy issue, obviously. But all the classroom doors, the office doors, they're going to need to be removed, right? Because we're just going to have open spaces where you walk in and out to be able to minimize the touch, right? Spreading of germs through doorknobs, through door handles, on the window panes of the doors. We're going to have to remove the doors completely. That's one idea. The other is that I believe they're going to have to be sanitation. The custodial staff is going to have to, at every school, going to have to do hourly sanitation checks. They're going to have to come in and provide more soap. They're going to have to make sure that there's paper towels, cleanse the sinks, cleanse the urinals and the stalls hourly. Outside of that,
our school is huge. Are they going to be hiring more custodial staff? I hear you, and I think that is a necessary and a great solution. And most companies are saying that they are, in fact, doing more regular deep cleansings. Awesome. I agree that our schools should follow suit, but I mean, we need to think about the fact that who's going to do that? The same 3 people that we have?
I think that in that juncture, right, no matter what school it is, I think that you designate which bathrooms can be used and which ones are completely locked. So maybe perhaps you rotate, just like the students will rotate, perhaps 2 days on, 2 days off, or what have you. You have certain bathrooms open on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, certain bathrooms open on Tuesdays and Thursdays, to give the custodial staff a chance to be able to catch up and sanitize them. Because we already know, as you just mentioned in that comment from Brenda, students especially, and this is not just the younger ones, the older ones too, they do not like to wash their hands. They will hand sanitize all day long in the room. But I'm like, sir, 5 times hand sanitizer.
Running water.
You need to go ahead and put some soap and water on that. Go ahead and touch the bathroom, please. Right?
Oh my gosh, I agree completely. And of course, okay, so with sanitation comes the use of PPE, right? Personal protective equipment, right? Exactly. We're gonna have our gloves, we're gonna have our masks. And I'm like, are these gonna be provided? Or are we expected to do it ourselves? What if it runs out? Are we expected to spend our own dollars? Like, what's the plan here? Like, help me.
That's a very crucial question. Crucial, right? And the thing about it is, you recognize that I'm assuming that budgets did not, the school budgets were not expecting this expense, right? So they didn't have an itemized line for PPE, especially to provide PPE for students and staff consistently, because we know you can't keep wearing the same mask days, weeks, months at a time. So that students will probably need 5 masks for 5 days. I'm just assuming that you provide cloth masks, give them 1 for each day of the week, and then be able to, hopefully they go home and wash them and wear their Monday mask on Monday, wash it, so on and so forth. Other than that, I'm not really sure how you consistently provide PPE. And then on top of that, we still need hand sanitizer. We still need sanitation, hand sanitizing wipes to be able to wipe down the doorknobs, or I'm not speaking of the doorknobs, the desk, to be able to wipe down the pencils or pens that we have to give out inevitably, because again, students are not going to be coming to our classrooms prepared.
Hold on. You said pencils and pens, and I'm like, that means paper. You want me to collect paper? Like you want me to physically hold paper that other people have held? I'm like, no. We need those computers that magically appeared. We need those to come back, and you need to have those, and we need to be 1-to-1. And you're going to take your laptop, you're going to sanitize it when you come in, you're going to sanitize it when you leave. I'm not, because that's too many, that is too much to sanitize. You're going to sanitize pencils, papers? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Maybe you just use your phone and you just take a picture and just and you just send that in. Is that? I don't know. I do know for our district, and a district I previously worked in OCPS, Orange County Public Schools in Orlando, Florida, there's a plan to go completely 1-to-1. I'm not sure that we have that to logistically be able to do that right now, where all students are 1-to-1, meaning every single student, grade 1 through grade 12. But if we do, that certainly needs to be the move that is made.
Yes, I mean, we're on that path, right? We gave out
But then,
several
but then, some people
laptops.
would ask the question. They'd beg to ask the question. Well, if we're going to go 1-to-1 with laptops, what is the point of the students even coming into the classroom? Some people would ask that, because if I have a laptop and that's how you expect to teach me each and every day, well, I could do that from my bed. I could do that under the covers, Miss Prasad. Why am I here?
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing. There's no learning quite like in-person learning, if you ask me. I mean, for some being, we know that being remote actually brought out this spirit in them that we hadn't seen, which was amazing. But there is something about school and being around your peers and being able to have the emotional experience of shared learning, right? And I think that is what aside from the things that you said before about the babysitting aspect and getting parents back into the economy, it's also learning through kinesthetics, through being able to see and feel is very different, right? And I think that a lot of us want to bring that back. A lot of us love that. That's part of the best. That is probably the best part of school, not to mention some of the safety that comes with being at school. So yes, you could do it on your laptop. And as a science teacher and thinking about, investigations and doing projects, some of these things, like literally I met with my team today and we're like, how do we bring to life these different things that we're doing? It's not the same. These simulations are not the same. So it's like, how do we do that? And so that is part of the reason that we want to be back at school. But still, even with that, your safety, your health has to come first.
Right. No, I completely agree with you. I just know that there will be some playing devil's advocate asking that question. But you're right. In-person learning, it just hits different, right? There's something, again, about the relationships that staff have with students that you can't feel when there's not that proximity between you and that student. And one of our administrators at our school has said that, she really relies on being able to look into a student's eyes to really and truly see how they're doing. So when you ask that question, how are you doing? And you say it over Zoom, over Google Meet, a student can tell you, I'm fine, and maybe they even have their camera off. But when you look into their eyes in person, when you hear the tone in their voice, you can tell something's not right. And then that's when you can, go into a mode of being able to figure out what's wrong and then be able to help them with that issue.
Yes, 100%. You can't hide. And yeah, I think that that's a beautiful thing, because there's no, I'm going to turn off the light when I'm turn off the camera when you're in person. And those relationships, especially I'm thinking about like, how we teach freshmen. So, we're getting brand new people who didn't even get closure with their 8th grade teachers, and how this screen is a barrier. So there's going to be a lot of navigating and building relationships in that way that a screen could not do, which again is, I think, part of the reason why this conversation is happening, because I don't think that anybody does not value the importance of going back to school. It's just is right now the time. There will be a time. And I mean, matter of fact, I'm thinking, like, we've been saying, say no to the status quo, but like, what have we been doing to challenge this? And I actually worry that we haven't even done enough to challenge it. And I think about like when students may invariably be joking around and coughing on each other or taking the mask off because it's funny. What trauma-informed practices do we have to be ready to handle that, except get out of the classroom?
Oh, suspensions.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
That's about it, right? And I'm saying that sarcastically, but
take you away from your learning.
Yes, right, but unfortunately, that is a problem that's already persisted in our educational communities across the nation, right? Is that we already know Black students face greater rates of suspension, expulsion, and arrest than their white classmates. And that there's federal data, there's statewide data, there's district data that shows that so many Black students are over-policed. They are criminalized, and we've talked about that in our previous episode, because of small actions that really should be something that you discuss. And wearing a mask, it pains me to say, but I can foresee right now, as I look into the future, that there will be some Black students, Black and brown students, that will not be wearing their mask, and that will then become a reason for them to be suspended, sent home, face some sort of consequence, when in actuality, the root of their issue has never been addressed, right? We don't know if it's because they're embarrassed about wearing the mask, that their mask is ripped, their mask, even if their mask doesn't match their outfit and that's their problem, that's to be discussed, right? It should not be, well, you know what, here, take 3 days and we'll see you on Monday. And that's really been the remedy to so many issues. So there has to be a conversation around what are the consequences, if any, because I don't think there should be any consequences for not wearing a mask. There should be conversations, more conversations, less consequences.
I agree completely. And I think that the fact that we may have hybrid learning will be like, you know what, just leave. You know what, you can do this on the computer. Like, you don't need to be here then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know, again, I'm looking as well for conversations, not consequences. Let's seek to understand the student's perspective. Let's seek to understand what they are going through and why they are not wearing this mask. Because let's face it, they are very intelligent. They've been going through this experience just like the rest of us. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They know they're supposed to be wearing masks. So if they're not wearing it, there's a reason. So we should probably talk about that reason. We should talk about, you know, is this work avoidant? What do you feel like you're behind? And this is your way of getting out the classroom so that you don't have to do work right now. You know, like, so let's talk about that.
I think you hit on a very key point, and I think that's really where the conversation should start and end with students not wearing masks, not following social distance guidelines, is that we have to express to them, this is not even just about you. This is about you. It's about your classmates. It's about your teachers. It's about all the staff members here. And then even more important than that, it's about your loved ones. Because if you, as someone who could be asymptomatic, contracts coronavirus and then brings it home, because how many of our students live with their grandparents? How many of them live with elders, aunts, uncles, right? Some of them may even live with children, siblings with special needs. So all of these folks who could be immunocompromised, you have to do your part in protecting them by making sure that you are following social distance guidelines, because even if you don't get sick, you can infect others. And I think that conversation, as you mentioned, our students are highly intelligent. They can understand that. They're empathetic as well. I think that will then encourage them to wear their mask. Not a 3-day suspension, because if you suspend me, I'm coming back pissed off because I was mad when you sent me out. I'm mad when I come back.
Yes, that part right there. You know, actually, that reminds me of a circle we were having. And it was like, does suspension solve anything? And all of them were like, no. And I was like, even the students understand that, like, you didn't actually solve anything. You kicked me out, but you didn't get to any kind of root of the problem. Like, I'm not saying there aren't times where space is needed, but if we're not having conversations to find the root of the issue, then we really didn't do anything. And too often, suspension is not accompanied with conversation. And it's too often used just as a quick fix, like, get out. We can't deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
We can't deal with you. And I think that right now, when we're thinking about this as a trauma, we need to remember that, like, the kids are going to be in an emotional state. They're also going to be super excited if we go back to school. There were even college students, Ty, you sent me a podcast and it was like, college students were asked if they should go back to school. And they were like, oh no, because once I see my friends, I'm gonna want to be with my friends.
Right.
And that's a real human thing. So when we're bringing our kids back to school and they're excited and they're horsing around and they haven't seen each other and we're just trying to, like, maintain safety, you know, it's important, but we also have to try and be empathetic and understanding and model the behavior that we would like to see them using themselves. So we want them to be empathetic. We want them to be understanding about how, yes, we're happy you see your friends. You can safely see your friends. We need to model that, not by being upset with them, but by talking with them. So,
absolutely. More conversations, less consequences.
More conversations, less consequences. I think that is probably the biggest question mark for me, because, man, they're going to figure out PPE and things like that. They're going to figure out testing, I think. You know, I want to give some benefit of the doubt. They're already talking about staggering the days and having smaller groups of people. They haven't necessarily talked about classroom size, you know, but my biggest question mark. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know. You know, I have to extend some grace to the administrators, not only at our school, but across the nation, across the district, across the states, because I don't know how you schedule classes with consideration for social distancing, right? Because again, what I talked about earlier, the walls are not going to move. So the classroom in itself is only but so big. But then you have to service so many students that are part of your school community. So how do you fit only 15 kids now in a room that used to fit 25, 30, right? You don't have a budget to hire more teachers, right? Then some teachers are already saying that they're not going to come back into the physical school building. So you may lose some teachers. Now you still have, again, more kids that you have to figure out a space for them. Where are they going to be able to be educated in a space where they're still being cared for in a safe manner? I don't know. That's a question. I'm glad I'm not as an administrator right here and now, because that question I don't have an answer for. Because really and truly, I think about some of the schools, like you mentioned before, we have a very big building, but some schools that may only have 15 classrooms, you physically don't have the space. Maybe as in Florida, where I taught before, they had double wide trailers that were classrooms. Maybe that's something that school districts will invest in. Will double wide trailers be available?
Stale air, though.
Well, I mean, they do have filtration systems and ACs, but still, I don't know what other options you have, because again, the building will not grow between now and whenever we go back to the physical space.
No, it won't. And the thing is, I think we also need to think about the kids' anxieties. That was one of the first podcasts we had. Like, what are some of your students' anxieties around this? And I think that a lot of them will be wondering, wait, I thought we weren't supposed to be in big groups.
Right.
Like I thought you said we weren't supposed to do X, Y, and Z. We're not even supposed to be at restaurants. And I'm thinking, like, restaurants actually, most places can't run at full capacity, and yet we are expected at we're expected to run at least at half capacity. And I'm sorry, half capacity for some schools is still 1,000 kids. I'm sorry. What?
There's more restrictions to go to Olive Garden and Red Lobster than it is to come to the classroom. Let's be honest about it. There are literally more restrictions for you to go out to eat than there is for you to come into the classroom and learn.
100%. And I just think that is very, 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 very problematic. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I feel like they have these CDC guidelines. They have all these guidelines that they're applying externally. And then when it comes to school, they're like, yeah, but like, we can just let that fly. We don't have to care about that. Like, we don't have to take that as seriously. Like, if we just trap them in a room, it'll be fine. Like, just put them all in the room and close the door. Like, all of a sudden they want to exercise the close the door and teach. Like, this is not what we meant.
Listen, I mean, part of our issue overall, right? And again, we've talked about it on several podcasts. So I hope that those who are listening have tuned into all 17 episodes, not just this one, that in education, far too often, instead of completely dismantling systems that perpetuate inequities, we just like to throw a new coat of paint on it, right? And anybody that's ever done any type of home improvement knows you can't just put a new layer of paint on a wall that's crumbling. If the foundation isn't strong, painting is not going to help. It's still going to fall down. It's going to be pretty when it falls, but it's still going to fall down, right? And that's unfortunately what we keep trying to do. And so that brings me to the last question I want to ask here today, right? Is this: how will schools center student voices as they continue to advocate for Black Lives Matter? Because I have seen a multitude of students leading movements. Joe, you and I actually attended a completely student-led protest in Waltham, Massachusetts, led by WAR, right? Waltham against racism. Mm-hmm. Yes. And students have used their voices. It's almost like they recognize and realize here and now in this time frame, you know what, my voice not only matters, but I have more power behind my voice than I realized before. Yes. So I'm certain that students are going to come back to the school, whether it be virtually or physically, and they're going to have some things to say. And they're going to say, you know what, I'm not taking that. The microaggressions.
As they
the disrespect.
Miss me?
Excuse me? So how do you think schools are going to be able to center the voices of students as they advocate, not only just for Black Lives Matter, but for other causes that are important to them, because they are in this space. And we know that even though we sort of live there and they come and go as students, they have to, if our school community is really going to be strong, they have to feel as if this is their home. So how do students feel like their voice is heard? What are schools supposed to do for that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, Ty. You said this before. We are battling a dual pandemic, which is racism and COVID. And if you ask me, COVID also exacerbated previously racial issues within our systems, including education and healthcare. So a lot of our students are coming and they've experienced more damage than many others, because at our school, we teach at a predominantly Black and brown institution, right? And so they not only are seeing the racism in the marches, they're also seeing it from police brutality and white supremacist culture. They're also seeing how racism enacts within healthcare and education. And now that they are seeing it in real life, they are emboldened to see what they can do. And they're going to want to have conversations about it. And I don't think that we should be shying away from conversations about race. Now is a great time to isolate race and ask the students, how exactly has this affected you? And what are you going to do about it? Because you are powerful and you can do. So what will you do? And we need to show them that we believe in them, and we need to help them through education, help them garner the skills that they need to be able to carry out these plans to bring about a more equitable world. So that's what I think schools could do.
I think as educators, it's incumbent upon us to take a moment, not just a moment, but consistently take a step back and allow the students to teach us, right? Stop being the ones that are always looking to ask all the questions for the students to give the answers, and allow them to ask questions, and then maybe even be the ones amongst themselves to provide answers as you just listen. And I think that that's really something that educators need to focus on. And this is for any race. Right? Allow your students to teach you, because they will express to you what matters to them, what they've been through, and how then you can aid them in either deepening their understanding or aid them in learning more about a specific subject will come to the light once you discuss it with them, right? Give them an opportunity, especially through restorative justice circles, as you mentioned before. So many of the things I've learned about my students personally and on their educational journeys came up during our restorative justice circles, where they felt like it was a safe space to speak their minds and a safe space to be able to say, hey, I'm vulnerable, but I want to share this with you guys because this is our community.
Yes. Community is going to be key. And I think that we just need to remember, even though there's so much uncertainty and there's so much of a burden, something we didn't really focus on because I think it's just understood. When you're planning for 3 different situations, online, hybrid, or full back in person, teachers right now are like, what is happening, right? It's a really heavy burden on how we are prepping and planning for the year to come. But I think regardless of what happens next, the most important and crucial thing is going to be, how are we going to support our students emotionally as we heal from this collective trauma? And we need to not just be thinking about oh, it's a them problem, it's a us problem. And we need to do this together.
Absolutely. So much of what we've said here today, we've tried to answer some of the questions that either were posed to us or we posed to each other. And we don't necessarily have an answer, but I think it's important that we continue to seek out those answers moving forward. We can't allow this moment to not become a movement. And that's really what's important here. And if I could sum this all up, I really would say 2 things. 1, they don't really care about us. 2, sending teachers back to school, it's a possible death sentence. And I don't say that lightly. Some teachers will die. I believe that's a fact. I pray it's not me, it's not you, Joe, it's not anyone that we know, but I truly believe that some teachers will die. And not only because of their contraction of coronavirus, but if you think about all of the factors that are involved, one of the ways that your immune system is weakened is through stress. And the stress of going back to school and an uncertainty, in a situation mired in uncertainty, that's going to bring about quite a bit of stress. And if you happen to have also pre-existing conditions, that's just going to lead you down a path of sickness. So I really believe that coronavirus and sending teachers back to school is a death sentence.
That is heavy. And you know what? Sometimes the honesty just needs to be said, and that is the truth. And there's nothing to add to that except all that I know is that is why we have to support each other during this time, regardless of what happens. Because yes, it is a death sentence if they send us back. You are right. People are going to die. And there's going to be stress, and nobody's going to understand what we are going through like we are.
Absolutely.
And we need to make
Absolutely.
sure that we are making time to hear each other, to be a shoulder for one another, so that we can unload some of the things that we are going through and hold each other up during these emotionally demanding and trying times. Like,
Right.
I don't know about you, but I'm like, ooh, I need a breather.
Right now, as we approach the beginning of the school year, whether it be next week, 2 weeks, a month, depending on where you are in the country, as we say at the end of the show, it's really important that you be good to yourself. Center yourself, put yourself in the right mind frame as an educator so that you can come back with your whole self, with your mindset focused on not only educating, but aiding and helping. Because we know that the role of a teacher is so much more than just an instructor. It's a counselor, it's a friend, it's a coach, it's a mentor, it's a liberator, right? It's so much motivator. There are so many terms that a teacher, or so many roles that a teacher fills on a daily basis.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And, you know, I think that it is important for us to have time and make time to fill up our cups. And so I found this quote that I really liked, and it says, "In this game, everyone needs a break to refuel, recharge, and jump back in full throttle." This is the author, Helen Edwards. And I think that, you know, it hasn't felt like there's been a break or a time to refuel. But we are going to find that. We are going to find a way to recharge and refuel, whether that's exercising, whether that's running, you know, whether that's taking a 5-week break from podcasting. Surprise.
Necessary break. This is the last episode of season 1. There's so much to be thankful for, so much growth that we've experienced, not only with us, but our community. We've had so many great opportunities that have already come about from this podcast. So trust me, it's not goodbye. It's see you later. But this is the last episode for season 1. I believe there's a lot of people that we need to thank.
There are so many people we need to thank. And I don't know if y'all have been with us from the very beginning, but if you have, you might remember this. And this is probably the beginning of our transformation. During this time, not only did we have this original logo, we changed over to our new 2B logo that was designed by Andre. Well, the creative idea was designed by Andre Rollins, and then Ty snazzed it up in his way and made it what it is today. But thank you, Andre, for taking us from a cloud to our very chic looking 2B, from Zoom to StreamYard. Yo, that is incredible. Incredible. And we've had so many cool guests come on too. I think, who was our first guest? Your friend, actually. Christian Lopez.
Absolutely.
Christian Lopez was our first guest. We had Celeste and Sarana, and then we had remember when the graduates came on? Oh man, there were so many good memories. E4E, oh my goodness. Can we have a whole pause for E4E? Oh my goodness. Y'all don't know, but like, they have specifically David has supported us emotionally, and he's actually the person that gave us like a kick in the behind we needed to get started podcasting. So a huge thank you to E4E for for all of that. So any final things you wanna tell our listeners, Ty? We're going away for 5 weeks, but should they just be sitting around doing nothing? What would you encourage them to be doing in our 5 week absence?
I would just say again to remember to be good to yourself, because I think that we've all experienced quite a bit. Even some of us have talked about that it's just an information overload as you try to attend every webinar, every conversation, every Zoom meeting, and taking all of that in, that you have to give yourself a mental break. So again, just be kind to yourself, exercise whatever practices that you have that you usually follow for your mental health. That's what I would suggest.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think that couples nicely with continue to do the work. It's a break, but as we've said, the learning never stops, and it shouldn't stop just because we're not helping to keep it going. So keep having those difficult conversations, keep educating yourself, because we have to keep it going. There are no stops, right? We have to take time to refuel, but we have to make sure that we are continuing to educate ourselves and do this good work to bring about the world that we want to see, which starts with each and every one of us. So we'll be back August 27th. And until then, remember
to be good to yourself,
to be true to yourself,
to educate yourself.
yourself.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.